All right, Sheikh, go ahead, inshallah.
Okay.
And Sheikh, just so you know, there is a Bitdefender
Oh,
advertisement on your computer. Sorry.
there we go.
Go ahead. Fadl, Sheikh.
Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وما استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. And welcome back to another episode as we continue through the lessons of the story of Musa alayhi salam. So we're going to get right into this because this is a massive topic when you're talking about Musa alayhi salam. And it also helps us to understand and even learn and appreciate some of the extraordinary women in the Quran, and particularly in Surah Al-Qasas, which very often is a surah that is overlooked when you're looking for all of the amazing and extraordinary women of Islam and how much they have contributed to preserving and protecting our deen. So we're going to see here today some of the interesting details that we find under this particular subject. So let's get right into it. And as you can see in front of your screens, we are at verse number 23. Now, at this point, Musa alayhi salam is at the city of Midian. And he basically prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, قَالَ عَسَى رَبِّي أَن يَهْدِيَنِي سَوَاءَ السَّبِيلِ, that he prayed that perhaps, inshallah, I hope my master would guide me and steer me towards a direction that is pleasing to him. وَلَمَّا وَرَدَ مَاءَ مَدْيَنَ وَجَدَ عَلَيْهِ أُمَّةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ يَسْقُونَ. So this is the verse you see in front of you. So when he arrived, there was a particular well in the city of Midian, and he found a group of people watering their herds. So basically, what Musa alayhi salam is doing, you can imagine for a moment that he's been walking in the middle of the desert for some time now. He's exhausted, he's tired, he's dirty, and he's thirsty. And he eventually sees that there's a group of people gathered. There's some trees there, and there's a pond or a little, water bed that's there. And he sees people with their animals. So he kind of gets closer to it. He finds a tree somewhere and he kind of relaxes and he's taking a rest. So he's under the shade of a tree. When he notices that there's this group of men, as he's sitting there, right, he's just trying to relax. I want you to just think for a moment if you were in the shoes of Musa alayhi salam. Here you are, you've been traveling in the middle of the desert for some time and you're exhausted in every way, shape, and form. And all of a sudden you see some commotion happening in front of you. How likely is it that you would get up from your rest that you haven't had for so long and go and investigate out of curiosity? What's going on here? Why are those people here? What are all these men doing with these animals? What's happening here? That's what Musa alayhi salam is doing now. So he notices that there's a group of people that are giving water to their animals. And apart from this group, he notices that there were two women somewhere across the hill somewhere, and they were holding back their herd. So they were holding back their herd. So in other words, their herd is trying to get to the waterbed and drink water. I mean, the animals, this is their instinct, right? They see water, and if they're thirsty, they're going to walk right to it. So they want to get to this water. But these two women are holding back their animals. And so Musa alayhi salam is sitting there under this beautiful brisk shade, and he's watching all of this. So he gets up. Here's the first lesson. Here's the first lesson. Musa alayhi salam is an opportunistic man, and somebody who is constantly looking for every opportunity to do righteousness and good deeds with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we're going to see a beautiful dua shortly as a reflection that can confirm this character in him. He's always looking for every opportunity out there to do something good. So he sees someone in trouble, he's out there going to help them to get out of trouble, which is kind of what led him to this position to begin with. But the point is, this is something that we're learning, and we're starting to see more and more of the character and the personality of Musa alayhi salam. He loves to help people. So he sees these two women. Now here's the next lesson. So he's not just waiting that somebody asks him for help. He's going to now go and initiate, hey, do you need some help? But push all of that aside for a second. This is an interesting scenario in the Quran because these are two women. And Musa alayhi salam is still in the process of being groomed to eventually become a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But here he's going to now approach these two women. So is there some fiqh involved in this? Absolutely. Now you have a man who sees two strange women who look like they're struggling with their animals. So he's going to go up there and he's going to inquire. So at least the parallel to that for us is, you see, women struggling with carrying their bags, or they're struggling with something, going up some stairs. Can a Muslim now go out of their way and say, hey, can I help you? Can I offer some help to you? Absolutely. And there's actually nothing in our religion that prevents us from doing that based on gender. Gender is completely irrelevant. When it comes to righteous deeds, throughout the Quran, Allah says, "Man amila salihan min dhakarin aw untha." So whoever does righteous deeds from amongst males or females. The point is that this ayah, Allah equates the two when it comes to righteous deeds, or even, evil deeds for that matter. So when it comes to our deeds and our performance in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are all judged the exact same way. So if you see an opportunity to help anyone, the last thing that should come to mind is gender. Like, it's completely irrelevant. And so Musa alayhi salam shows us here, and this is one important fiqh element that we can extract from this ayah, that he sees two individuals in trouble, and he's going to go up now and approach them. And look what he says. وَوَجَدَ مِن دُونِهِمْ امْرَأَتَيْنِ تَذُودَانِ قَالَ مَا خَطْبُكُمَا. He asks them, what is the problem? What are you guys doing? Because it was strange. You have one group of men that are watering their herds, and you have just these two individuals standing here by the hill away from them, and they're trying to pull away their animal away from the waterbed. So he's like, this is strange. قَالَ مَا خَطْبُكُمَا. And here's another fiqh element that you can extract from this. He doesn't say, hey, salamu alaikum, kayf halukum, how are you guys? It's a nice day, isn't it? I was sitting by the shade over there, and I kind of noticed you guys struggling with your animals, and I was like, okay, let me just come by and say hi and see what's going on. There's no, wasteful, as we call in the Quran, there's no laghu. There's no unnecessary conversation happening here. He gets straight to the point. قَالَ مَا خَطْبُكُمَا. What are you guys doing? What's wrong? What's happened? So the fiqh that's extracted here is that anytime you're dealing with strangers in general, male or female, but very specifically of the opposite gender, one of the things that if you fear, okay, you might cross the line, you might say something, you might get comfortable, you might start to socialize, and those are certain boundaries that you, for your own sake, you don't want to cross. Like, you just don't even want to open that door. You just want to help and concentrate on helping. What we learned from here is that conversation with the opposite gender is always permissible unless there is something to make it impermissible. And one of the things that can lead to impermissibility when it comes to these kinds of conversation is just crossing the boundaries when we socialize. So let me give you an example. Here in where we live, here in Toronto and Canada, and in the West in general, if you see somebody of the opposite gender, okay, you see a fellow Muslima, you can say Salamu Alaikum to her. It's not strange, it's not unusual, right? Salamu Alaikum. And there's a 99% chance that she'll respond, Wa Alaikum Assalam. You can also ask, how are you, sister? There's a 99% chance she might respond, Alhamdulillah, I'm okay. Now, in terms of what our standard is, what we're accustomed to, and what is considered or deemed to be normal day-to-day conversation, are we good so far? We're good so far. But the point here is that if you apply this scenario in other cultures and other regions across the globe, it might be a totally different outcome. There are some countries you can't even say hello to somebody of the opposite gender. You can't even do that. That's like, who are you? Why are you saying hi to me? You can't just walk up to any Muslim and say, Assalamu alaikum, sister, or Assalamu alaikum, brother. Some Muslim countries, that's against the culture. It's weird. It's strange. It's foreign. What are you saying Salaam alaikum to me? Just go your way. And that should be respected as well. That should be part of this process. So you should know what the boundaries are and if you cross them or not. And so it seems like in this scenario here, Musa alayhi salam getting straight to the point and focusing on what the issue is exactly what him as a soon-to-be prophet of Allah, but in this case here, still somebody who is humble, who is blessed, and who is under Allah's care, who is close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He exemplifies the conduct of somebody who is close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anytime you're in a similar situation, just focus and concentrate on what you need to do and leave it at that. No additional conversations, no additional, hey, how's it going? Hey, you look different today. Oh, what are you wearing? None of that stuff. Just throw all of that aside. And our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, did he talk to women? All the time. So that's fine. But then what was he saying to them? What did they say to him? It was strictly restricted to them asking questions and him teaching them. There are even narrations of our Prophet ﷺ walking by a group of women sitting, and he would actually wave and his hand. It was a gesture meaning Salamu alaikum. So he would say to them Salamu alaikum from a distance and raise his hands. And he's the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And can you imagine in certain cultures or certain scenarios, you do the same thing? I mean, a bunch of sisters sitting in a masjid saying, hey, Salamu alaikum, everyone. They'll probably look at you like, who's he? What is he doing? It's weird. So you have to just be considerate of those things. All right. So it does require some insight. So Musa alayhi salam asks, so this is the key lesson here. Just get to the point. What is the problem? قَالَ مَا خَطْبُكُمَا قَالَتَا, they both respond. لَا نَسْقِي حَتَّى يُصْدِرَ الرِّعَاء. We cannot water our animals. So they didn't say, who are you? Where'd you come from? Why are you talking to us? They also responded to the question. So another fiqh element here is, yes, you can respond. Yes, if somebody asks you a random question about anything, just respond. But stick to the question. Don't go around that. Don't go above that. Just keep it simple and straightforward. Those are the etiquettes, particularly of people who are close to their creator. Those are the etiquettes of a believer. Unfortunately, in this day and age, we make things like this really uncomfortable. We make scenarios like this really weird and really uncomfortable. You might see an imam or a sheikh standing, he's just finished praying salah, everybody's in the lobby, and a sister comes up to him and asks him a question. She has an Islamic question, and she says, Sheikh, can I ask you something? And this happens to me all the time, 99% of the time. If I'm in a masjid somewhere, someone will come to me and ask me a question, and many times it's even a sister, right? And I'm standing there. Yes, sister, go ahead, ask your question. And then every so often, you'll notice the awkward brother or somebody walking out, like, oh my God, look at him. Look, he's actually talking to her. No, go back to this ayah. We're not sitting there laughing away and socialize. Hey, oh my God, it's so nice to see you. None of that stuff. Stick to the point, straightforward conversation, be courteous, kind. Whatever the conversation is, that's what you're talking about. And just be polite about it. Okay, jazakallah khair, assalamu alaikum. Done. And just move on. And that is the etiquette of our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. So they respond now. Let's look at context here. Let's get back to the scenario and see what's happening. So they respond and says, we cannot water our animals until the other shepherds are done. So it seems like these women, there might have been some struggle, some issues where, if they found themselves that if they were ever amongst these men watering their animals, that maybe they might, try to engage in some kind of conversation or harass these women to an extent. So they chose to avoid intermixing with them. They chose to avoid that. And they're like, we're just waiting here. We want them to leave so we can bring our animals, but they're not leaving. They're still there. So look at that. That's the first part. Look at how the ayah ends. وَأَبُونَا شَيْخٌ كَبِيرٌ. And for our father is a very old man. Now, before I explain to you what that's all about, because it seems pretty random, why and how all of a sudden they mention, oh, by the way, our father, he's a pretty big sheikh. Now, sheikh here can mean one of two things. Could mean somebody who is an elderly man, because one of the linguistically, when you use the term sheikh, it's usually refer to somebody who starts to become gray, right? So you give this term to somebody and you describe them as an elderly person. Sheikh is also used for somebody who is highly respected in a tribe, in a community, in a culture. And they're not just respected because of their knowledge, but also because of their status, their power, their authority that they're given. They're also looked at and called a sheikh. That's why you have some kings, in the Middle East. They will announce them as sheikh so and so, and they'll give the name or the king or the prince of that city, sheikh so and so. But they've never actually gone to an Islamic university. They're a scholar of Islam, but they've been given a status and authority in the city. And so the title sheikh is also used to describe somebody who is respected in that manner. And both of these work together, because usually somebody who is an elderly man is usually by default somebody that we respect anyway. If they come on the bus, we get up and we give them the chair to sit. We respect that, their age and their status and so on and so forth. When an elderly person shares stories of you when they grew up and the struggles that they went through and how they became what they became and all the things that they were able to achieve and accomplish in their lives, this is all part of their status of being a sheikh. So they mentioned that their father is a very old man. And this means that the father now had status in the city of Midian. And it seems like some stories mention, it seems like this father was the leader of a particular business that they had or something, and where the women were in charge. Here's another fiqh element that we're going to add to this. Obviously, you see that women are working here. They're actually doing the work. So whatever this business is that their father has of taking care of animals and herding animals and being shepherds of these animals, it clearly shows that women are also involved in that process. The parallel for us is women are also involved in the process of work in general. They're part of that movement. They contribute where they contribute, and they simply become part of that entire organization. Right? They're not excluded out of, certain areas or positions and things like, no, they're simply part of it, just like anyone else. And so clearly you can see that these two women are doing the groundwork here. And the father is an older man, and he's probably back in the tent somewhere and taking care of business on that end. Okay. Now, take a look at a couple of questions here that we have. Is it appropriate that a prophet of Allah is speaking to strange women? So what is the answer to this? Absolutely. What is halal is halal, and what is haram of it is clearly haram of it. As the Prophet ﷺ mentions, al-halalu bayyin wal-haramu bayyin. So what the halal is clear and the haram is also very clear and explicit. And keep in mind, when we ask this kind of question, the notion that, okay, we ask these kinds of questions because we're thinking they may have crossed some boundaries or might say or do something haram with these women is inappropriate for us to even ask or assume about prophets of Allah. Why? Because prophets of Allah don't do that. They don't do that. These are individuals that are selected from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are under special care and protection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and their status, the revelation that they receive from Allah, all of these things protects them from crossing these boundaries. And so to even ask the question itself is strange enough, but to assume that they would cross any of those boundaries is inappropriate for any student to assume, simply because of association. They are prophets and messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why did the women even mention their father? Now you understand why. But here's a third element. Okay, so we mentioned that their father's old, that their father also has high status. Here is a third benefit to this question. Why did they even mention the father? You know, if you're talking to two young women, or one young woman for that matter, right? And you're asking her for directions. So you pull her aside and say, listen, can you give me directions? I'm trying to find a store in the mall here somewhere. I'm trying to find this person. I'm trying to get to this place. Could you just tell me exactly how I get there? And, she'll tell you. So she gets right to it. She'll tell you, it's like, yeah, and by the way, my husband is sitting there. What does that do for the person who's asked the question or asked for directions? Immediately, it's like, okay, at first it might be like a little awkward. Okay, why are you telling me that? But from her perspective, it's like, you don't even cross any lines with me because my husband is there. So these two women are saying to Musa alayhi salam, oh, and by the way, our father is a sheikh. So, if shaitan is around and you're thinking or just pops into your mind anything, because keep in mind, they don't know Musa alayhi salam. To him, he's just another man like the other men that's there. What some of the scholars said is that it was because of the ending of this ayah that they gave this, if you want to call it disclosure, that it seems as though the women, they were kind of harassed in this way by these men. So they just assume that all men were like that, and they don't know who Musa alayhi salam truly is at this point. So they just assume that, okay, listen, we're going to tell you, like we would tell all those men watering their animals, our father is a sheikh, so don't mess with us. Don't cross any lines with us. And what we learn here, the fiqh that we extract from this is really simple. And this is important for sisters listening to this. The moment you feel that you're in a position where you want to protect yourself from any form of fitna, whether it be in conversation or interaction with the opposite gender, these are the moments where it is completely allowed for you to be just blunt and straightforward, even if you think you might offend the other person listening. It's completely fine. Because if you're firm and you're straightforward, and then you add to that a shield saying, hey, look, my dad's a bodybuilder, by the way. Or, my husband, he's black belt. And he's right there. He's coming back. He just went to that store. He's going to be back. So yeah, here are the directions you can go now. You're allowed to cut those doors of shayateen and jinn, the wasawis of shayateen, by being what I like to call respectfully rude. So you're respectful, but it might come off rude. That's not your intention. It's more like you're respectfully firm and done. Now I'll give you an example that all of us can relate to. No, brother asks her, is it okay if we can just keep in touch like through email or something? Or, what's your Instagram? And not even phone number, just one indirect way in. What's your Instagram? What's your Facebook account? What name do you have online? Let's just stay connected that way. And she responds and she's like, no. Why? We don't need to stay in contact. When next time you see me at the masjid, then you can ask me. Okay? Assalamu alaikum. Done. That's what we extrapolate from this ayah. Is being really straightforward. And this is how you maintain control. Be straightforward. And if you must be blunt, then obviously do it in the most sort of neutral, respectful way possible, inshallah. Okay, let's move on. Now, here's the next ayah. So Musa alayhi salam, once he hears and he understands what's happening, okay, fine. فَسَقَى لَهُمَا. So he watered their herd for them. So Musa alayhi salam says, okay, I get it. Your father's a pretty big sheikh. Okay, let me take these animals. He doesn't say anything. He just literally grabs the animals. فَسَقَى لَهُمَا ثُمَّ تَوَلَّى إِلَى الظِّلِّ. And he watered them for these two women. So he took these animals to the waterbed, gave them water. They were satisfied. They were calm. They're not fighting away anymore. They're relaxed. Brings it back, gives it to these two women, and he walks away and he withdrew to the shade and prayed. So he went back to the shade that he initially was sitting at when he saw all of this unfolding, and he started to pray. Now, let me share with you the prayer that he makes. ثم تولى إلى ظل فقال رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. This is one of the most beautiful du'as in the entire Quran. So he withdrew to the shade. And before I mention, we start and we talk about this particular dua, I have the Arabic in front of you on the screen as well. So that's the Arabic, that's the actual ayah itself. فسقى لهما ثم تولى إلى الظل فقال ربي إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. So what is this dua all about? First and foremost, the question really that we want to ask before we understand this dua is, why did Musa alayhi salam pray to begin with? Who does that? All he did, he saw something unusual. He went over and inquired. Once he understood what the problem was, he solved it and walked away. Why is he praying? Why is he making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The answer to that, look at the translation. It says, فَقَالَ رَبِّي, oh my master, I am truly in desperate need. إِنِّي لِمَا أَنزَلْتَ إِلَيْ. I'm in such desperate need. I'm constantly in need of whatever rizq of goodness or opportunity you might have in store for me. In other words, look at how Musa alayhi salam translated that whole scenario. He's basically saying to Allah, you allowed what happened to happen in Egypt. I accidentally took the life of this man, this guard. I left. I walked for days, maybe weeks in the desert. I ended up in the city of Midian. I sat under a tree and I saw what I saw. I saw these two women. I went and I helped. And then when I helped, I felt good that I helped somebody. And now I realize and I understand that you had created this opportunity for me to do some good. Oh Allah, I'm always in desperate need of opportunities that you can provide for me so that I can perform some good. Subhanallah. Let that sink in for a minute. لما أنزلت إلي من خير. Any good opportunity I can do. Faqir. We all know what faqir is. Fuqara. Somebody who's poor, who's on the street. Faqir is literally somebody who has nothing. They don't have the means to survive. So he is saying that if you create more opportunities like this for me to do good and build up my scale of righteous deeds, that is a reflection of my desperate need for you to do this more and more. I'm in desperate need for that. So, oh Allah, continue to create these opportunities for me. Unbelievable, subhanallah. The reason why I placed this dua in Arabic for you is in hopes that, those of you who have your phone, or you can snapshot the screen or screenshot, just capture this ayah. Okay, and if you don't, then I'll tell you it's ayah number 24 in Surah Al-Qasas. Memorize it. فَقَالَ رَبِّي إِنِّي لِمَا أَنزَلْتَ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَقِيرٍ. It is such a beautiful reminder. It is so profound. It is so beautiful. And what a beautiful reflection it is of Musa alayhi salam. This is real deep, thought-provoking ideas that we get of just how to interpret when we get an opportunity to do some act of goodness for anyone, for anybody, that we try our best to soak up and utilize those opportunities and treat them as though we are so poor. We are like people on the street, and the only thing that gets us off the street is not money. It's actually righteous deeds. Oh Allah, the only way I get myself out of poverty is if you give me more opportunities to do righteous deeds. Subhanallah. I think it's just absolutely one of the most remarkable verses in the entire Quran. Okay, next verse. فَجَاءَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا تَمْشِي عَلَى اسْتِحْيَاءٍ. So after all is said and done, they go back to their father. These two women go back. Now you can imagine, like, these details are not mentioned here, but this is why these details are not mentioned. It causes us to at least think and try to walk through the series of events that are happening. Now these women, their animals are now cared for. Now they take their animals back to their father, and there's a good chance that this would have taken them some time had Musa alayhi salam not been there. But now all of a sudden, now they're coming back early. Just keep in mind, right? They're coming back early because they got some help from this strange man, suppose. So the father may have asked them, how come you guys are back so early? It never takes you that quickly, to feed these animals. And they might have relayed the story to them. Might have relayed the story. And he said, Dad, I mean, we were there, we're struggling with our animals, and all of a sudden this man, strange man, just came up to us, asked us what was wrong. We told him, but don't worry, Dad. We mentioned about you as well. We told him that, our dad is so-and-so, so he didn't try anything. He didn't say anything. He didn't cross no boundaries with us. And then he helped us. And when he helped us, he gave us back the animals, and he didn't say anything. He just walked away. Like, he was fine. He was respectful. He didn't cross no boundaries with us. So when the father's hearing all of this, it's interesting. Father's like, okay, that's strange. So he says to one of them, perhaps maybe one of the more mature of the two. Then one of the two women came back to Musa alayhi salam. فَجَاءَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا تَمْشِي عَلَى اسْتِحْيَاءٍ, walking modestly. Modestly is not just, walking with her head down, facing the floor, or she had this big, massive bed sheet covering her. No, not necessarily. Modestly here is she kept herself, together in the sense that she didn't cross no lines. That's all modesty. She had haya. She was very respectful. She listened to her father, and clearly her father trusts his daughters. To tell one of them, he didn't say, okay, you know what? Let me and you go back and find this man. He sent the daughter back alone and says, okay, you go back and I want you to find this man and bring him back to me. So she came with modesty, humility, haya. And she said, قالت إن أبي. She says, indeed, our father is inviting you. Inna abi. She didn't say, okay, look, we want to invite you to come by our tent because our dad wants to talk to you. She doesn't say we. She delivers the message exactly the way she's told. So that Musa alayhi salam, here's some fiqh again. She doesn't say, hey, do you mind coming by the tent? My dad wants to talk to you. It's very different than if you say, my father sent me to say to you, come by the tent because he wants to talk to you. See the difference? Because the first way, if she just said, look, can you come by? What does that kind of give the indication or the impression to Musa alayhi salam? It could be, or anybody in that situation, it could be like, oh, you want me to come by? Okay, sure. I mean, I got time. I'll come by. And forget that it's actually the father that sent the message, as opposed to my father told me to tell you this. So when she says it this way, which is in the ayah, now it's clearly her saying, it's not me, my dad. It's not my idea. So don't think anything of me. Don't think this is something that I just, came up with and like, hey, just come by. No, it's not from me at all. Inna abi, my father's the one. يدعوك, he's the one that's calling you and inviting you. ليجزيك أجر ما سقيت لنا, so that he may give you some kind of reward, some kind of compensation. See, the word that's used here is ajr. Ajr is one of the names of reward in the Quran, and it specifically means a portion. So you do one deed, you get one reward. That's called ajrun. So she's like, look, you did us a favor, and my father wants you to come by because he wants to pay you something, he wants to give you something. Now, Musa alayhi salam, remember, he's lost everything. He's in the middle of the desert by himself. This is a golden opportunity for him. Now he can actually maybe get some food, and he might get some money, something valuable that he could survive with. So he doesn't hesitate. So he goes, فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُ, when Musa came to him. So Musa alayhi salam, no hesitation, he came to the father. وَقَصَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَصَص, and told him his whole story. So what does it look like? Look like the father saw something beautiful and something, appealing about Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam may have sat down. They probably started talking for some time. The father may be asking, where'd you come from? What happened to you? What's your story? Tell us who you are. And he sat down and he told him everything. I came from Egypt. This is what happened to me. I didn't really do it. Like, I didn't mean to do it. It was an accident, and so on. And told him his whole story. وَقَصَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَصَص, gave him the full story. قَالَ لَا تَخَفْ, this old man said, don't be afraid. You're okay now. You're safe. لا تخف نجوت من القوم الظالمين. Says you are now safe from all those kinds of people. Meaning you're in a good place now. We're in a good place. So now we've answered this. What can we learn about the woman's approach to Musa alayhi salam? So the point is now, Musa alayhi salam finds a place where he can stay. He can relax for a bit. Now he starts to learn. He becomes part of the business. And one of the ayah that I didn't mention, which is what I'll conclude with now, inshallah. قالت إحداهما, one of these women said, يا أبت استأجره, oh dad, why don't you hire him? Because we obviously see the kind of work he can do. He took care of our animals. We know what the guy is capable of doing. We know he's a good worker. We know we can trust him. We were out there by ourselves. He didn't try nothing with us. Why don't you hire him? So when they suggested this, إِنَّ خَيْرَ مَنِ اسْتَأْجَرْتَ الْقَوِيُّ الْأَمِينُ, the best of the one that you hire is somebody who is trustworthy and obviously strong, which Musa alayhi salam has both of these qualities. What we learn from this ayah, this is ayah number 26, what we learn from this is, you see, women can also contribute to business ideas, business growth. So they're making suggestions as well. They're suggesting, look, here's how we can expand our business, Dad. Why don't we hire him? We've seen what he can do. He's finished that, if we want to call it a probation period, and he's passed. He's done well. And the best person that we can hire for the kind of job that we do is somebody who is qawiyun and amin, somebody who's physically strong and somebody who's trustworthy. And he's got both of those qualities. So just let's do this. And so he's hired. And Musa alayhi salam now remains with this family, and he continues to live and learn the trade, and he learns the business, and lots of pretty awesome things happen as a result, which leads us to the next part of his journey, the preaching. When Musa alayhi salam eventually, lots of things happen, which is the introduction of next week's episode. So next week's episode, I'm going to introduce to you this whole section about preaching, what led to all of this. So we were still in the tent with this father and his daughters, and we're going to just mention to you a couple of ayat of what transpired that led to Musa alayhi salam eventually becoming a prophet. So with that being said, here's where we're going to pause, insha'Allah ta'ala. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to guide us and inspire us, nurture our hearts and our souls with this beautiful, beautiful story, and highlight to us some of the most important lessons of the story of Musa alayhi salam, insha'Allah ta'ala. Allahumma ameen. And so with that being said, guys, we'll pause here, insha'Allah. If any of you have any questions, then you're welcome. You can email me, just muslehkhan@gmail.com. And I'll be sure, insha'Allah, to take a look at those. So with that being said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to reward all of you and honor all of us and keep us safe and healthy. Allahumma ameen. Fajazakum Allahu khayran. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.